Tigray عطي بجاتبا يا أخلكي تتبعي تسعيدك بالكريم Tigray عطي أكل بلي أنو خلقي اللي كنت معي بحاتي بطولك حالي بالحين سحري خسرت تكرع عدد زناتي أبسا زنتقلت سبين مدسا زبد حس يا أخلق بلي سفلقيهم تبزم عقلي Tigray عطي بجاتبا يا أخلقي تتبعي تسعيدك بالكريم Tigray عطي أكل بلي أنو خلقي اللي كنت معي بحاتي بطولك حالي Tigray عطي بجاتبا يا أخلقي تتبعي تسعيدك بالكريم Tigray عطي أكل بلي أنو خلقي اللي كنت معي All right, there we are. Welcome everyone. This is Cyber Power of Tigray. So our guest today from the UK is Miliat. We are fortunate to have her on the show. So we are going to discuss today topics that are sensitive, sometimes painful, that's happening in Tigray. Before we do that, I am going to briefly say something in Tigrayan as usual, so that our Tagaru who are watching and following, but also may not necessarily understand English around the globe, can understand at least what we're going to be saying. So before I do the introduction before Amelia does her introduction, I'm going to say in Tigrinya, Kurat Gaishna, Lamanti Hiznakum Karina Zalana, Meliat Bahal of United Kingdom with Dema of UK, Europe Azala, Menasay, Miss Tagaru Menasay Alam, Hebrata Koina, Nai Sagamat Tigray Mosizolo Makara, Ni Menasay diaspora Zalana Tagaro Alam Bullet, Kamena Governor, Nat Hagazna, Natamaetna, social media, Bisalama selfie, Khali, Ganzavat Musa, Tekare, Kamena Governor, Nitigray, Buzuh. تجارب سدة زلنا كمجرنا نحجرنا نتجراي كنا خم زلنا مليات حفتنا لما أنتي بإنجليزية برنامجنا كتزاجنا لكم زلنا ناي يكاتي تأثر تحدي تماري حلفنا يلنا عنا بدحريتي زل دما مسمرنا أسمعنا لمختي يلو تصحيف زل بدحري بتجرينا خاطة أو طرفي نمليات حفتنا بعلا شما عابي كم زلا كتعربية ناب إنجليزية قانقنا هنحلفوينا حصرنا بالكفت ما أخذنا في المجال دما بتناتنا قانقنا مننتنا تجارو نخور علو نكابر اللو قانقنا تجرينا هجرنا تجراي حزبنا تجارو بحد خوينكم نتكاتلنا بخبري عندكم سايبر باور تجراي بيوتيوب بسايبر باور تجراي فيسبوك بوياني فيسبوك سلستي channelات نمحال فيو يعني لي. So Miliat, I just did a long introduction in Tigrinya. I express and explain our Tagaru. I'm sure you heard me. So go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what you've been doing, and then we'll go right into the questions or discussions.
Great. Okay, well, thank you for that. And I apologize because of my poor Tigrinya, but hoping to learn very fluently soon. My name is Mela. I currently reside in the UK, in London. I originally I studied international relations, but I haven't worked with it as much. I've done a couple of like volunteering in regards to that here and there. I've also been quite involved with the Ethiopian community previously in the UK as well, with just bridging the gap between the diaspora in the UK and the United Kingdom and Ethiopia. So I do have quite a lot of community engagement kind of spirit. So I do have a passion for that. Right now, after November, as we all remember, after the war on Tigray was declared, just like everyone else, me, myself, I was worried about my family, the people of Tigray in general. So that led us into action, I guess. So we mobilized quite well in the UK, the youth in the UK who have been amazing. And there was already an established network, but not to an extent that it is now. So we just built on that. So we've got a lot more members. A lot of the youth have become very vocal, very involved. Most of us were not in touch with our community as we should have been before. And I think that is a big lesson that we learned. So yeah, that's me.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So we have various issues that obviously many of us Tagaru diaspora are been beyond concern is usually when something is very minimal. What's happening is disaster, crisis generated by evil men that has been nicknamed Mashrafat Abiy Ahmed. So we try to add a humor to what's happening in Tigray, obviously, but it's not our Tagaru brothers and sisters in the diaspora have been extremely angry, upset, and whatnot, but resilient at the same time. So the program ideally is that we're trying to make sure that the young Tagaru understands the history and the tragedy at the same time of Tigray. So, for instance, this week, 18, 19, and 20th of February was the 46th anniversary of the Tigray movement that brought democracy to Ethiopia, and the Ethiopians enjoy for extended period of time. As of November 4th, we all know Tigray is being cut off from the world. Recently, electricity was somewhat restored in Mekelle, and telecommunication was starting to work, and we start seeing atrocities after atrocities. And now, as of a couple of days ago, we discovered that electricity is completely shut off. But to make matters worse, I want to show you the video that is resurfacing right now or being posted on various platforms on social media, that there's a discussion. The unelected Ethiopian Abiy Ahmed, Mashrafat Ahmed, has requested more troops from Eritrea. And I'm actually personally hearing that they are very short distance away from the Tekeza Dam, which is an area that covers hydroelectric throughout most cities throughout Tigray. And their agenda, what I'm hearing, is that they are headed there to destroy it, which for us Tagaru, it doesn't surprise us. So I'm going to show there was a DW International air in Tigray now. So I'm going to show that in Tigray now. Obviously, for those of you English speaking, we'll do our best to translate it for you. But the short version of it is that the Eritrean and the Ethiopian troops are headed to the Tekeza Dam to destroy it, is the story behind it. So here we go. I am going to play the audio in a sec, and then we'll discuss about it.
ወራር ሰራዊት ህግደፍ በወተሃደራት ፋሽስቲ አብይ አሕመድ ተዓጅቡ መመንጨዊ ኃይሊ ኤሌክትሪክ ተከዘ ንምዕናው ናብቲ ቦታ እናገስገሰ ምዃኑ ወተሃደራዊ ወሃብ ቃል ኃይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይ ተጋድላይ ገብረ ጻድቃነ ገሊጾም ኣለዉ እቲ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ናይ መብራትን ንትግራይ ድማ ሙሉእ ንምጥፋእን ልእኽቶ ሒዙ ንትግራይ ዝወረረ ሰራዊት ህግደፍ ኣብዛ ሕዚ ሰዓት ሓደ ክፍለ ሰራዊት ሙሉእ ኣዋፊሩ ወተሃደራዊ ፋሽስቲ አብይ አሕመድ እናተዓጀበ ንመመንጨዊ ኃይሊ ኤሌክትሪክ ተከዘ ንምዕናው ኣብ ናይ 2 ሰዓትን ፈርቃን ርሕቀት ከም ዝርከብ እቶም ወሃብ ቃል ኣገንዚቦም ኣለዉ ኣብ ዓውደ ግንባራት ዝሕንኽ ወተሃደራዊ ስዕረት ይግልበቡ ዘለዉ እዞም ወረርቲ ሓይልታት ዓንጾ ንህዝቢ ከም ዝጭፍጭፉን ልምዓታዊ ትካላት ከም ዘዕንውን ህዝብና ንማሕበረሰብ ዓለም ንክፈልጦ ይግባእ ክብሉ ድማ እዞም ወሃቢ ቃል ገሊፆም ኣለዉ። እዞም ወረርቲ ሓይልታት ንህዝቢ ትግራይ ጨፍጭፎም ንምግዛእ ዝነበሮም ሕልሚ ብተሪር ተጋድሎ ንፅንዓትን ሓይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይን ህዝቢ ትግራይን ምፍሻሉ ምስ ተገንዘቡ ንትግራይ መሊኦም ዕንዮም ንምኻድ እናተንቀሳቐሱ ከም ዝርከቡ ማሕበረሰብ ዓለም ንክግንዘብ እቶም ወሃቢ ቃል ኣተሓሳሲቦም ኣለዉ። ሰራዊት ግደፍን ወተሃደራት ፋሽስቲ ኣብይ ኣሕመድን ቅድም ክብል ንፋብሪካታት ዓለባ ኣልመዳም ዓዲግራት መድሓኒትን ሓዊሱ ብዙሓት ትካላት ትምህርቲ ጥዕናን ፋብሪካ ሽኮር ወልቃይትን ከም ዘዕነው ዝሓበሩ እዞም ወሃቢ ቃል እዚ ድማ ንትግራይ ናብ ሙሉእ ደልሓመት ናይ ምእታው ሕሱም ተግባር ጫፍ ዝኾነ ፍጻመ ንምትግባር ተናዮም ኣብ ናይ ጥፍኣት መንገዲ ከም ዘለው ወተሃደራዊ ወሃቢ ቃል ሓይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይ ተጋድላይ ገብረ ጻድቃን ገሊፆም ኣለዉ።
So obviously that was about a minute and a half video that I just put together for the audience to understand what's happening in Tigray. So at any given moment, this this water supply basically that supplies, I believe, even the folks in Mekelle City, which is roughly about 500,000, even their water resource comes from that. So electricity isn't just the only resource that the dam is helping to communities in Tigray. So for us young Tagaru, you know, it's heartbreaking, you know, the injustice, the cruelty, the inhumane. So for us Tagaru, particularly the grassroots, the young Tagaru, I'm inspired the movement that we have generated and the pressure that we have built. So when you hear something like this, you know, how do we keep everybody positive? How do we keep the young Tagarus motivated to pressure the international community to respond to this atrocity?
Yeah, I mean, this is you know, it's very sad. I mean, to hear of such things of your fellow countrymen, I guess, and a massive, you know, destroying these kind of infrastructures or these kind of developments that have been made in Tigray. If you do believe in the idea of Ethiopia, or even, you know, if you believe that Tigray's developments are included in Ethiopia's developments, this is a huge blow to Ethiopia as well then. And not only that, but the devastation that these kind of attacks on infrastructure or like any development that had been made in Tigray is going to cause to the people of Tigray is immense. And it's not a way to solve the issues that have been, you know, that have been created between the regional government of Tigray and Mr. Abiy Ahmed. So I don't think this is the correct way. Indeed, you know, trying to economically weaken a region or economically subjugate a certain social group, I don't think will ever amount to the results that is that the central government wants. Maybe might even do the opposite. You know, the fire that you lit to burn something might come back and burn you. And I think in this case, it's absolutely the right term to be using. The fire that the central government has used to burn Tigray will eventually come back to burn their powers or their right to power, because what is being done in Tigray right now is it's not a law enforcement operation. It's a genocidal war. It's a war against the people. It's a crime against humanity. These are war crimes. You know, making sure that a whole region of over 8-9 million people are not able to access basic necessities like electricity, food, water, the basic necessities that anyone needs to live. That is a crime that, you know, that will get you hauled up in front of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So personally, I'm not understanding the logic behind this, behind destroying something that is sustaining that many people, if, as we have been told so many times by the central government in Arat Kilo, that the war is not against the people of Tigray, but is against a political party. these kind of moves completely disregard everything they've been saying. Because this destroying Takaza Dam is not going to affect any of the soldiers. It's not going to affect anyone but the people of Tigray. So I think this is, this is just something that's despicable. And if this is done, this is only going to add to the hundreds of atrocities of the crimes against the people of Tigray that we've been hearing about so far.
Oh, sorry, I had myself unmuted. So as you were speaking, I was showing a glimpse of, some of the infrastructure, the Takaza Dam, obviously. And so here's another shot of the, so obviously in the summertime, water resource in Tigray is very limited. So if they destroy this, the agenda, the war is not really against the Tigray Defense Forces. The war actually is against the Tigray people based on ethnic. So, we know that ethnic cleansing is taking place in Tigray. And so I guess my, frustration is the lack of, action by the international community. Even, many countries now are saying this is wrong, that Eritrean troops should be withdrawn from from Tigray. But Eritrea just flat out say, like, no. At first they say they were denying it ever, being in Tigray. We know now, combined between Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, over 500,000 troops have entered to Tigray, and many of them have perished in the fight. And then in retaliation, they're destroying every infrastructure. There's the looting, the rape, and so many things that are happening in Tigray. So in our part here in the United States, we are pressuring, we are mounting protests. And in fact, this coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we are doing a 3-day protest in Washington, D.C. And I know I've seen a few European politicians, like Mick Wallace is one of them. He's been very vocal about the atrocity. What could you update us, like what, Tigray diaspora is doing in Europe and European politicians are doing to help to stop this genocide?
Yeah. So Europe, as you can imagine, I think we were just speaking about this before as well, about how the community in the States, I believe, is a bit bigger than Europe. Although I think the organizations here have been doing a great job, but in terms of the youth, we didn't have that much connection. Like, we weren't as mobilized as, like I said earlier, that as we should have been. And I think now we have begun to take major steps in mobilizing and trying to create awareness. There's like worldwide leaders, obviously, for the whole since the Tigray crisis started. There's worldwide leaders. There's Omna Tigray. There's a lot of different organizations. There's Tighat. There's the GSTS. Like, everyone has been, working day and night to ensure that this gets heard in the right places. In Europe, we in the UK and a couple of our EU counterparts have created, mobilized in a group called Tigray Youth Network, which I am a part of. So the Tigray Youth Network essentially it started off almost like information sharing kind of group. It's when, especially initially, the shock of knowing that we were in such a situation, it made us all kind of pull together to kind of support each other. But now it's moved past that, and initially, after we kind of understood what kind of the gravity of the situation that we were in, we started to actually take action. So the first thing that you do naturally when you hear of things like this is approach your member of parliament, approach your representative, just like you guys have done in the States. So we took that procedure as well on board, and we all approached our members of parliament, to say, okay, some of us had families there, some of us had like people that we knew, friends, so a lot of people mobilized and said, okay, let's write to our MPs, and we did that. Some MPs did reply back to us. Some of them almost brushed it off as if this was a general situation that was going on across the whole of Ethiopia as a whole. I saw quite a lot of tendencies to do that, actually, brush this off as if this was happening, in the whole of Ethiopia. But which I want to actually just quickly mention, what's going on in the whole of Ethiopia reflects back on the current government that we have. It reflects back on the miscalculations. It reflects back on the inexperience, the mishandling of the whole, not just Ethiopia's political sphere right now, but even the regional sphere in the Horn of Africa. That it kind of shows a miscalculation across the board. But in saying that, there's no region in Ethiopia, a whole region that had its own government or that had centralized government wage a war on that specific region, and not just against, like I said earlier, not just against the political party, but against the people. There hasn't been such a thing. We hear of different social groups or different ethnic conflicts between two different various ethnic groups, but we don't hear of centralized government that's sitting in office, being the cause of these atrocities. That's what makes it different. It's the government against its own people, the government that's meant to represent these people. The government that's meant to be taking care of the whole of Ethiopia is attacking a specific minority group. And I think that's what makes this very different. But going back to what you asked me, so we mobilized, we reached out to our MPs, members of parliament, but then when we started being nervous because we started to see tendencies of almost disregarding what's going on. I mean, I'm not going to say this about all the MPs that have been involved, but some of them we have seen that with. And this led us to mobilize globally as well, not just within the UK, but globally in the EU. And the EU have done a fantastic job. And the EU's, I think they're leading the action in terms of the international actors. They were the first ones to withhold funding from Ethiopia. Over 88 million, if I'm correct. So this is a massive step, to align yourself with someone who's implicated, or a government that's implicated in war crimes, is absolutely, it says a lot about the nation, the nation or that respective state. We campaigned vigorously about there's a genocide bill, trade bill, that they were revising in the House of Lords. So the way that the British politics works is that we've got a House of Lords, we've got the House of Commons, right? So the House of Lords is able to pass on amendments of our of the bills that are sent into the House of Commons, which are the members of Parliament. So the trade bill, the genocide trade bill, they actually called it, was sent into the House of Commons. So these are the members of our parliament. And the way that affected, that would be effective to Tigray, is that the UK government, if this genocidal bill the amendment had been passed, then the UK government would have to consider basically the stance of the government that they're doing a bilateral trade deal with, in terms of human rights, of any violation of human rights, of whether they were implicated in genocide as well. So all these things come into play, and it was a bit of a disappointment to see that the government in office did not want to pass they did not want to vote for the amendment to actually to be, to take hold. They didn't want to vote for that. So I think for us, it's been a bit disappointing to see that the British government hasn't moved as fast as it should have. A lot of our cries have been ignored in the UK. In saying this, however, there was a lot of, I heard very recently that there has been a number of MPs, over 40 MPs that mobilized and have actually been lobbying the government to act or lobbying the government to take effective, to make an effective stance, to make a change, or to like be influential in the sense that maybe withholding aid, maybe having different sort of relations with the Ethiopian government to ensure that humanitarian aid, which we are in desperate need of, the whole population of Tigray right now is in desperate need. We've got the Human Rights Watch, we've got the UN, we've got all these different independent bodies that have confirmed how many people are in a dire situation. It's not just Tagaru saying, oh, we're in need. This has been confirmed externally by the UN and stuff. So all these bodies have confirmed, but again, I'm quite disappointed with the reaction of the UK government, and I hope soon we've got like a lobbying campaign coming up, very, very kindly and very well organized by a former Labour MP by the name of Sally Kibu, who has been very vocal. I don't know if some of you follow her on Twitter, on social media. She's been amazing. She's been since the start. She's seen what was essentially wrong with declaring a war in a whole region, and she's kind of seen the humanitarian aspect of this, and has seen that there is no excuse for forbidding humanitarian relief, for forbidding medical equipment from these people, for forbidding them from electricity, water, all these things that a human being needs to survive, unless it's to collectively punish. So, she has very kindly mobilized a lot of our members of the parliament. She's reached out to a lot of people she knows, and we are currently organizing a 24 hours for Tigray campaign, which will take place on the 9th of March. And before that, because of the COVID situation, I'm sure you're aware of, we couldn't really protest as much as we wanted to. So we did, our first protest was, I think, just before we went into lockdown, because we went into a national lockdown again in November. So it was just before that. It was done in Downing Street. So this is where the Prime Minister resides, number 10 Downing Street, just outside it. We had a really good protest. We had a massive turnout. As you can imagine, people were emotional. They were angry. And it was a successful protest. Unfortunately, we had another one to outside the UAE embassy as well. And that was, calling for an end of UAE's involvement in this war, because we know where the UAE goes, it turns into the proxy wars, which we've heard so much about in Yemen, which has killed so many people because not just because of war, but because of the, because of this environmental situation that war had led Yemen to. So again, we had another protest there. So we've had altogether in the UK, we've had 2 protests. We've had many virtual protests. We've had many, campaigns coming from the UK, but physically we've only done 2 because of the COVID situation. But, we've got the youth who are so highly involved in lobbying, the youth that are mobilized in Tigray Youth Network, literally full of talent. All of them have something amazing to bring to the table. And it's actually amazing to see the fact that everyone's reaching within themselves to provide their skill set, to provide, an educational element, or whatever they are expertise of, they're bringing it to the table. And everyone has been working day and night. So I would definitely, recognize how hard the youth have been working all over Europe, but especially in the UK, from what I know too.
And that's the encouraging aspect of what I'm inspired about, is a young generation responding to the crisis based on humanity, but also most importantly, just feeling so passionate about, all of us have relatives back home, whether it be grandparents or cousins and uncles and aunts and whatnot. I think, it is inspiring how we Tagaru diaspora, Tigray origin, no matter what nationality that we are on paper, we just the unification, how we came to show the world that a small group of Tagaru can just mobilize and bring awareness and pressure. And I think you mentioned the system, like you described in the UK, is relatively similar to what we have in the United States. Is basically we have the member of Congress, and then we have a member of the Senate, basically, and our bureaucracy goes. The Senate usually in the United States has pretty tight partisan issues, obviously, but at the end of the day, what we have done in the U.S. Is that even though we have COVID, as you mentioned, even though we have restrictions, we have gone out, protested. Some cities, they've gone out on vehicles to protest. So if there's a lockdown that you can't protest, then mobilizing with vehicles. I think it's like really amazing. I've seen people doing candlelight visuals in mountains, which I thought was so creative. To just be able to get fresh air. Also, with many of our Tagalog brothers and sisters are depressed and angry, and so I think and you talk about, you're right, the fact that the aid to Ethiopia, 87 million, was withheld just in the last week or so. The United States government withheld 273 million dollars worth of aid that would have been sent, given to Ethiopia to use it to massacre civilians in Tigray. So that's, so we are, what we're doing in the United States, what Tagar are doing throughout Europe and Australia. Actually, I'm so proud. I think Canada is, working as well, but I think the strength that I've seen in the U.S., Europe and Australia and the Middle East, also, even though they're not protesting, they're cyber, social media, they're out there really pushing to bring the awareness, and I think we've successfully done that. You talked about war crimes, and I think that's one of the things that I have. I know this article is a couple days old, but I think for the young Togaro to understand that what we're doing actually may seem slow, because 110 days of genocide in Tigray is a long time, but actually our action is working. And what I mean by that is, this is an article that I saw a couple days ago that I want to share it. I'm sure most people have already saw it, but it's important to briefly talk about it. This evil Mashrafat Ahmed was viewed as Nobel Prize winner. Just imagine. And then now they're talking, he'll be the first Nobel Prize winner to actually be tried, by the ICC. I mean, the ICC acronym I'm using is International Criminal Court, obviously. So when we see this, I think Tagaru also needs to have they need to pat themselves on their shoulders. They need to really acknowledge that they are doing an amazing job. So part of this platform is, I don't just want to focus on the negative, but I want to, this is the achievement of Tagaru working together all over the globe to bring this atrocity to an end, and to bring this criminal into a court of law, hopefully in The Hague, and we will see him, be sentenced to whatever the court will find him for the atrocity, which we'll talk about the Aksum and various other areas. But let's briefly, what's your take on the fact that he may be, he will become the first Nobel Prize winner for supposed to be a peacemaker, to become the criminal in the eyes of the world?
Well, to be honest with you, I think the time frame is what we have to consider. It's the only thing, because I do believe 100% that what has been done in Tigray now will eventually lead to an ICC court case. Not eventually, very soon, actually. In fact, it's how quick it will be to produce evidence that will implicate the Prime Minister in the war crimes that's taken place in Tigray. I think there's been a bit of a push to focus the war crimes on the Eritrean troops that have invaded Tigray. But when we come down to the core point of even why the Eritrean troops have entered Tigray, it comes down to Arat Kilo, it comes down to Mr. Abiy Ahmed. So the understanding that Mr. Abiy Ahmed, again, like what I said before, he is the leader of Ethiopia. It's not Isaias Afwerki who is the leader, even though now we may contest who's leading what. What we believe is to be the leader of Ethiopia is Mr. Abiy Ahmed. So not just the fact that he invited the Eritrean troops who are mass atrocities by the masses in Tigray, but the fact that there is, I think, again, I'll go back to the miscalculation, because in this day and age of globalization, there is no way you can silence such a massively scaled war, a genocidal war to this extent, longer than maybe a couple of days, because eventually these things are being exposed. And we've been hearing about all the cases or the data that's being that has amounted of the atrocities that have taken place, and a lot of the weaponized rape that's been taking place in Tigray, which is horrendous, And even today, I think there's a massive attempt. There's almost like a nervous rebuttal coming from the Ethiopian government. I don't know whether you've seen this, but in the way they have started cyber counterattacks, they've started cyber campaigning almost right at the back of the Tagaru who are campaigning because of a real issue, because of what's happening to their families, what they're hearing from their families directly. Not where, the information that we are receiving, we are not getting it from any government. We're not getting it from anyone. We're getting it directly from the sources. And all this information that's being exposed, we've heard that, the government has paid lobbyists, American companies, to start campaigns such as, Unity for Ethiopia campaigns and Rising Ethiopia. All these campaigns that come, it's ironic that they come at this time. It's ironic that they come after a genocidal war has been declared, because you can kind of see that the whole agenda of these campaigns is as a rebuttal to cover up the mass atrocities that's taking place in Tigray, because there's no other reason for them to have this campaign, with even the hashtags being used. Ethiopia prevails came straight after Tigray prevails. It's everything that's being done is being mirrored as the counterattack, and that shows how nervous this government has become. The recklessness of the government shows how nervous this government has become. And you're right, one of the main reasons there's so much miscalculating and action that we see as reckless, or that we don't see a logic reason for why it's been taken, is because of how mobilized and how effective our campaigning is. So it's almost like a compliment, to be honest with you. It's a compliment. It shows that we have been doing what we're meant to be doing. We have been reaching the right people. We have been communicating these atrocities. When some of the atrocities that I've been hearing, I honestly wouldn't, if you had taken me back 3-4 months ago, I would not think that this would happen on Ethiopian soil. I would never think this, because, as Tagaru, we've been brought up to think that the love that we have for Ethiopia is the same love Ethiopia has for us. And I think there's been, I wouldn't say misconception, but there's been a bit of a gap that we have missed, And I think the difference is now, during the Derg struggles and stuff, we were hearing this, and our parents or our guardians, whatever, they wanted to integrate us as Tagaru into the Ethiopian community without even creating a feeling of betrayal or feeling of animosity towards Ethiopia. And that has been done so effectively, which is why I think a lot of us had been so involved, with maybe Ethiopian communities, but not the Tigray community, because we were made to believe, that Ethiopia is essentially our home, and we are, we're able to express our identity in Ethiopia. I think this kind of just brings it back to reality. You know, this kind of brings it back to the reality of what maybe we haven't heard from our parents, because as people, I do believe that we are very meek. We're told to be meek. We're told to turn the other cheek, which I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But you have to understand when the abuser continues to abuse and not apologize for the abuse inflicted upon you, then something needs to change, right? And if something needs to change, this is no way. I'm not talking about what is in the future plans of Tigray or anything like that. But if the future needs to change, that means there's been a social construct within the people, within the ideology of what we were fighting against before, the Unitarian system that we disagree to be a part of. There's that system in itself is what has been used now to subject us. And what we need to realize is our enemy. It's not a social group. I think it's the ideology of certain social groups, and the construct of Ethiopia itself has become our enemy. It does not benefit Tigray. I think I digressed from the original topic of Mr. Abiy Ahmed coming to the ICC, but it's just touching upon the fact that it's actually, when you think about it, for us, it's been such a long time that we've been thinking about our families, or we've been thinking, okay, all these atrocities and no one's listening to us. But essentially, creating a case in the International Criminal Court is a very difficult thing. It takes a long time for a lot of, I don't know if anyone follows the Bosnia war, the war crimes committed in Bosnia, the human rights violation, in Bosnia, the genocide in Bosnia, all these things. The people that had been in charge of the military that had caused these atrocities, they were trialed a long time after. And this is not just to discourage, but in fact, it's to encourage, to see how much progress we've achieved in such little time. So I think it is. It's knocking on our door. The ICC case is definitely knocking on our door, and I think rightly so. But I do think if Mr. Abiy Ahmed is going to stand trial in the ICC court, I think his counterpart or his partner in crime, Mr. Isaias Afwerki, also needs to stand in the ICC. Although we know that Mr. Isaias Afwerki doesn't have any regard for international institutions, I still think we need to implicate both of them in these atrocities. I think you're mute again, Mike.
The usual mute. So you were awfully kind to call Mashrafat Ahmed Mr. Abiy Ahmed or Isaias Afwerki. So let me say, I agree with you everything you say. I disagree with you. I will never, unless a slip of a tongue, have any respect whatsoever and call me. I know it's a kind way to do it, but you know what? I will no longer show any remorse, any respect to Leba, means like a thief. Eritreans spent 30 years of training how to steal. Troops, that is, not the people. Troops, Eritrean troops have learned how to, they put over actually about 70% of Eritrean population. Eritrea should be about 10 million right now. There's less than 4 million people in Eritrea. So if Eritrea, 30 years of struggle and 30 years of dictatorship was not an atrocity, and that atrocity that Isaias Afwerki, who is like a coward, a killer, inhumane, worse than Hitler, because at least Hitler, went all out and killed 5 to 6 million Jews, and the world was shocked. The world knew exactly what happened. What's happened in Eritrea is for 30 years, and I'm going to go back why it's important for the audience to understand this, is that for 30 years, Isaias Afwerki terrorized Eritreans, and the young Eritreans had left the country massively. along the way. Over 100,000 of them were housed in Tigray, was protected and safeguarded in Tigray. By who? By our family, by our people in Tigray. The rest of them who attempted or have migrated to the West, to Europe and Middle East, many of them also have died along the way. And whether it be the Mediterranean Sea, Liberia, Libya, Sudan, Egypt, I mean, name it all. It is sad. These are human beings. They are people. I know some of my brothers and sisters from Tigray, they get emotional about it, but I love you guys. I have to be honest that they are human beings being destroyed by one person, Isaias Afwerki. So for Eritreans in the diaspora that are silent, that are paying Isaias Afwerki for the Hagdef or whatever they're called, shame on you guys. You are utterly coward, a supporter of rapist, a supporter of a killer, and your genocide, your theft has spread throughout Tigray, and that's what you've done in Tigray. So for Ethiopia,
just to touch upon what you said. Sorry to interrupt you, but
okay.
I think what you just said, I'll let you continue. But me personally, we cannot have any expectations from Higda supporters, because Higda supporters have abandoned their own people. They've abandoned their own youth. They've abandoned what it means to be Eritrean. They've abandoned all of this. So as Tagaru, we cannot have any ounce of expectation from any Higda supporters. Just to
no, thank you. No, I appreciate that, because, and I'm not expecting. I just wanted, like, for Eritreans, Hegdef or any of those, killer supporters, including those who are financially supporting like a killer, someone who actually steals like socks and underwear. That's the lowest like level that you can get. So if you're Eritrean, you're proud and you're silent and you're dancing on the death of Tagaru, you're dancing on the death of Tagaru and Eritreans. You simply, I put you on the same level and category as the killer in Asmara. You are no difference. You might be in UK, in Russia, in Japan, in Australia, America, South America, North America, whatever. I don't care. But at the end of the day, when you support that kind of atrocity, when you dance in Tigrinya, which I've seen those videos, I simply put you in one basket. You are a coward. You support like a thug, a killer, a rapist. So you might well just be like, in that one. I have no room for you. I have no respect for you whatsoever. So to go back to what you say, how Abiy Ahmed and his killers are scared, you know what? Even those who are calling themselves diplomats, we will go after them actually. And I mean this like, and it is a very clear, and I mean it legally. So this is not to be somehow twisted, saying, oh, young Tagaru are being like intimidating or provoking a hate speech and whatnot. No, it's not. We are going to go after you through the legal system. But when you come to Tigray to kill our people, we have young Jaganu, we call them Tagaru. The Jaganu meaning heroes. They will destroy you when it comes to the battlefield. That's why you have no moral value to fight in the valleys and mountains of Tigray. So when a young Tigrawaiti and Tigrawai, which defines a fighter, a female and a male from Tigray, one young fighter takes on 50 to 100 Eritreans and Amhara bandas. So they call us banda. They're the banda ones. So let me just show this. Yesterday, so the day before yesterday in the US, there is a Somalian American congresswoman in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So she tweeted, you saw that.
Yeah, I think she's
And you know what happened? The coward Futsum Araga, who I hope she'd go to hell right now, responded yesterday Did you see that?
I didn't see his response. No, I didn't see his response.
I mean, literally, they're so scared. They're having to dial 911 to direct them where the bathroom is when they're so scared. They can't even figure out their own bathroom. I mean, literally, I hate to say this. I hate to really, like, you know, but that's so let me share the letter.
Yeah, okay.
There it is. This is by Ambassador Fusum Araga to the US. Yesterday was a Saturday, actually. It is Sunday here, more afternoon. So on a weekend, okay? Embassy is closed on a weekend. So his puppet, the killer, and the killer supporter, these people also need to face crime against humanity because they are aiding and abetting. So that's why they are criminals. On my book, as an American, as Tigray from Tigray and American citizen, I have every right to bash them, to tell them the way it is. In fact, while I'm at it, I want to tell all Tagaru in the United States, please start emailing him, start calling, flood his phone lines so he will be out of business. Please, please slam him with all your emails and phone calls. Make like 3 to 4 calls a day. And if you're using like one phone, create a new phone from Google and use different numbers. Create like 5-10 different emails, flood him. Make him feel like he's, you know what? If he have to go delete like 2,000-3,000 emails a day, he have to close that email account and create a new one. Anyway, sorry. So, can you see that letter?
Yes. Yeah, I can't read it, but I can see it.
So he's saying, the Honorable Elaine Omar, and then he's got the address. Dear Representative Omar, I present to you, I'm responding to your February 19, 2020 press release in which you express alarm regarding the situation in Ethiopia. I wish to assure you that there is no causes for alarm. A fair and objective assessment of the facts will, I'm having a hard time seeing it too, it's like a pretty small print, but will cultivate any concerns you may have and aid you in gaining more balanced understanding of the real situation on the issue you raised. Do you want me to continue or do you want to comment? Because I'm fired up.
Continue. It's okay.
Thank you. There's no government in Ethiopia, but he wrote, the government of Ethiopia, which is the unelected government of Ethiopia, abides by recognized principle and conventions of international law that allows prisoners that shall be treated with respect due to their inherent dignity, though the Ethiopian dictator, he said government, I'm editing it, strives to discharge it is obligations to massacre, to rape, to order atrocity on its own citizen in Tigray. So it's not describing there, but I'm edit again. That's not quoted. That's my own version of what they mean by it. So, to me, I don't, there's no point of going through it. In summary, they are scared to death because us, Tagaru, we are holding them accountable for their actions, the massacre, what they're doing. Like, when we just look at like what happened to Aksum, for example, like 800 people, 800 people massacred for what? For simply trying to protect a historical ark of cabinet.
Even the reaction, so I'm sure you remember the reaction that we were receiving as we were advocating or as we were tweeting in the start of the war, before any of the media had got a hold of any of the evidence that was trickling out of Tigray through people coming out of the region and stuff like that. Before the mass media, the international media had got a hold of this, the reception that we were receiving was that this was misinformation, that we're lying, that we're making these up, that we are juntas who want our junta leadership to continue. So all these things that were being said, we continued. And what happened was there was a shift. I don't know if you've noticed, there was a shift in the change of the reception that we received. It became, let's start fundraising for Tigray. Let's start collecting money for Tigray, who are in a dire situation. But no one likes to mention why they are in a dire situation. It makes absolutely no sense. You know, I've been saying this from the start, like all this organization of charities, NGOs, this whole idea of the government is going to help the people of Tigray, but the government are still in Tigray committing atrocities. They are still there. It's not as if even they stepped out of Tigray or the whole situation is over, done and dusted, and they want to help. That's not the case. They are still in Tigray, raping women, causing killing children, assassinations on the street, making I don't even want to get to the level of atrocities that we've been hearing, but all these gruesome things that we're hearing of, and the same government in the same breath would want the Ethiopian people to donate their paychecks. Rather, Mr. Abiy Ahmed said he donated some trucks, water trucks, and his 1 month salary from his book or whatever his income is. He said he wants to donate it. It's almost as if the killer that is coming to kill you is trying to buy you, trying to contribute to your funeral, or like buying your coffin. That's literally how it is. Someone who wants to murder you wants to help out with the funeral costs, or wants to help your family after he's killed. It just completely defeats the whole purpose of logic. Speaking of the ICC, the ICC and the level of atrocities that have been taking place, we heard of all this, the crimes that are being committed against the women of Tigray. We've heard of the weaponized rape being used by the soldiers, both ENDF and air trained soldiers. We've heard of all these things, right? And it was completely denied. In the beginning, it was completely denied as misinformation. They've even went as far as to say that there has been cases of rape in Tigray already. Rape happens universally. For you to say rape has happened in Tigray already, completely, it doesn't make any logical sense, or it doesn't account to a counter argument either. And they tried to push that on social media, they lobbied saying, oh no, this has been happening in Tigray. Okay. And when that was discounted, as obviously you'd expect it to be because it makes no logical sense, when that was discounted, what did they do? They created a task force. Including the very, very cowardly Ms. Sahala Work, the president, as a woman, representative of all these women societies, she went to visit rape victims in Tigray. Created a whole task force. But the issue with that task force is this task force is not helping the women of Tigray, because they are walking in to speak to these women with the same people that are raping them too. So you're only adding salt to the wound. You're not helping any situation. And they understand this, but they are trying to save face in the international community. The task force that was created is not going to help any woman in Tigray that was a victim of rape. It is merely created, in fact, to wipe out the evidence, to wipe out completely.
I was going to say, it's actually, a police officer like rapes a woman, and that same police officer is told to go investigate that woman's rape.
Exactly that. And this task force is not created to solve the issues, because the issues are still happening, right? So you can't solve an issue you can't go and rebuild something that's already disintegrating, or that is already in the process of crumbling. It's impossible. And this can only be seen as an attempt to cover up, not to genuinely help these women, but to cover up the little evidence that they are actually coming out with, because they are being intimidated, they are scared for their lives, and the small evidence that we are receiving from them, this is an attempt to cover that up. These task forces are not genuine. The charities being created are not genuine at all.
That's right. And even though they shut down like power and electricity is out in Tigray, what's real interesting is there's still a few things that are trickling to us. And if people are wondering what's happening, even in the remote area of Tigray in villages, when Eritrean mercenaries are, beaten by Tagara soldiers, they go into like villagers house to house, and what do? Take a look at this. It's a short video. They're burning and looting. This is literally like a house in a village. They just set it on fire. Eritrean army. This is by the Eritrean army. And so, to me, how are you in Tigray fighting Tigray Defense Forces? What did the civilian homes have to do with any of the fighting? And then what's really, there's not a good audio quality. That's why I'm talking. What the video is showing, obviously, is how is it justified in any reasonable human mind, any human being who's got a reasonable mind, that you are like destroying like civilians, innocent people. So for anyone who argues that says like, oh, they're out fighting law and order in what? So that's why with these ambassadors who are writing letters, I mean, imagine this congresswoman in the United States tweets on a Friday, on a Saturday. They monitoring our Twitter account, Facebook, all of us. I mean, they literally are fighting to shut us down. But you know what? We live in a democratic society in the world that he doesn't have a control over. He's unable to do. You mentioned earlier that he's paying money. He's paid $135,000 for a lobbyist here in the United States, and we are going to make that lobbyist his life like live in hell, not physical harm him, but we're going to make sure that we're going to embarrass him, that other business will run away from him, unless he withdraw from the lobbyist that he's trying to lobby at the hands of. I mean, I was talking to like a few people yesterday that were telling me, like up until like yesterday, I've been like saying like, oh my gosh, girls as young as 10 are being raped in Tigray. Now they're saying they've heard stories like girls as young as 4 years old, Eritrean and Amhara militia and federal troops are raping a 4-year-old child. Like, I'm seriously like, I'm not trying to go insane here, but how do you comprehend when these kind of things are happening and the Amhara and any Eritreans would try to justify it? Or like, this ambassador, he should be kicked out of the US right now and sent back. The US, my government in this country, I want them to cut off like diplomatic ties completely with Ethiopia. And those diplomats, actually, I would love for them to be arrested and sent to The Hague so that they can await until Abiy Ahmed is arrested and Isaias Afwerki and shackled and brought to The Hague for the injustice and for the war crimes they have committed so far. Anyway, that's my emotional little bit workup that I just had to say. But so we saw Aksum, but what, 800 people have been massacred. He's silencing any media that talks about the fact of what's happening in Tigray. Any politician potentially who may defeat him in any upcoming election are starving to death in jail in Tigray. Tagaru prisoners from Addis Ababa actually have been taken out into unknown locations. So family members actually in Addis now could no longer visit any of their family member who has been arrested on Trump-up charges. I mean, what he is doing right now is that before he is picked up and put to jail, he's trying to eliminate an entire ethnic, not just in Tigray, but throughout the country in Ethiopia. So for those of you Ethiopians who are following us, I want to say thank you, but you know what? I don't want to say it. If you really want to be appreciated, if you really want to show that you're a human being, you have a human heart, speak up. You don't have to get politic. Talk about the genocide. Talk about the rape, the starvation. And when you have Eritrean army coming and fighting in Tigray, Tagaro are supposed to be your people, Ethiopians. We could no longer say we are Ethiopians. When you bring an outsider to fight us, I have my Yakat Asert Hadahat, and then this is what I'm proud of, Tigray. So we will become a nation. We don't need Ethiopia anymore. As far as I'm concerned, Ethiopia can continue to, it's already, headed like deep in the hole. But as far as I'm concerned, it can go like 1,000 miles further south and deep hole, and I can care less. I just want them to leave Tagaro alone, get out of Tigray, and then we will take care of Tigray. We, meaning the diaspora, we will take care of Tagaro. We will take care of Tigray with our people. Go ahead.
No, I just think sometimes, with both Eritrean and Ethiopian communities, there's a tendency to idolize one leader, just the way that Hegdefi, I like to call them Hegdefians. The Hegdefians have idolized the dictator Isaias Afwerki, and the Prosperity Party supporters are idolizing Abiy Ahmed. And the danger in that is any idolization of one singular leader always causes, a domestic political issue. It will never amount to anything good. We've seen this with Eritrea. The idolization of Isaias Afwerki, or rather, when we think about it, Isaias Afwerki is the whole government of Eritrea. There is no government. There's no Department of Justice. I heard now. In fact, I was very enlightened to hear that there's a Minister of Information in Eritrea, and that I think that was probably one of the most funniest things I've heard, because to think of a country that is basically has no political opposition, has no elections, all of these things, and all these people are, being subjected and you're not allowed to speak their truth or even to get the justice that they deserve, to claim that there's a Minister of Information. I don't know. For me, that's just not a joke. That's almost an insult to our intelligence, I think. But all these, like I said, going back to the idolization of any leadership, you can believe in an ideology, but when we go back to the core of what Mr. Isaias Afwerki and what Abiy Ahmed believe, their ideologies don't amount to anything except latching onto power. We've seen this with Isaias Afwerki. Isaias Afwerki has never had an election. He doesn't plan on having an election. He is openly declared that he doesn't plan on having an election. He said, what election, in a BBC interview. Abiy Ahmed, he's postponed elections for no eminent reason, because clearly a couple of months after that, not too long after that, he went into a whole genocidal war in Tigray and was organizing marathon runs in the middle of Addis Ababa. So we know that was not the reason. However, even the elections that he has planned to have in June, we all know who's going to win that, because there's no contesting opposition political parties.
Except he won't be around by then.
Hopefully not. But even if he does get elected, there was no elections. I wouldn't even like to say that elections have been held, because it would make no sense that OLF are not having any involvement. The only party that we see was actively being involved was from the Amhara region. And we all know the Amhara region, the militias and the Fano group had been very heavily involved in the Tigray crisis, in the genocide. So again, it comes back to the fact that everyone who's not aligned with Mr. Abiy Ahmed has been casted out from these elections. So we know there's no opposition. So we've almost submerged into another version of Eritrea, just with 110 million population. The Eritreans themselves have been fighting, you know, the ones that do see the reasoning and the fact that Mr. Isaias Afwerki is dragging Eritrea down. They've been fighting for so long to return Eritrea back, you know, to create a constitution for their people, to create some type of justice system, you know, to have accountability for what is going on as well to their people. And you know, to think that instead of Ethiopia looking towards I don't know, maybe a system like the West or the more developed countries like that, you know, all these South Africa, all these different countries that are being run in an open manner, or like with freedom of speech and equality and all these things needed in a state to be successful, instead of using them, mirroring them, we're mirroring the dictatorship in Asmara. And that is, I think, probably should be the biggest embarrassment to Ethiopians. The fact that the closest ally Ethiopia has is Mr. Isaias Afwerki. That is an embarrassment in itself. To align yourself with someone with such morals, with such disregard for his own people, only outlines what the belief in Addis Ababa is to today. It only shows the exact, you know, you don't, what's that saying of, if you you know, I can't remember, but whoever you are around is who you become. Your friends are a reflection of you. Who you keep around you are basically the mirror of yourself. And this is it's just so applicable to the situation. We've seen Abiy Ahmed arrest all political prisoners. We've seen him weaponize starvation in Tigray, which is what Mr. Isaias Afwerki has been doing to Eritreans for a very long time. We've seen the weaponized rape. We've seen complete shutdown of these independent, independent media. You know, we know Isaias Afwerki hasn't had any independent media in the country unless he's given them a go-ahead. Even in the interview that he gave the other day, you know, there was a slip of the tongue, and he even said, the question you ask me next is I'm going to say this, and showing that all his questions that he's being asked by Eri TV has been premeditated. There's nothing that comes of Mr. Isaias Afwerki. To be honest with me, it doesn't surprise me at all. Anything that comes out Mr. Isaias Afwerki. The only surprise is the fact that Ethiopia is beginning to mirror Mr. Isaias Afwerki. You know, so I think that is a massive cause of embarrassment for Ethiopians. It's a massive cause of embarrassment.
Except Abiy Ahmed has no shame. Amhara, sadly, in Ethiopia and the diaspora, except the farmers, have no shame. Their mind, see how they frame their mind? Let me just like briefly, I'm going to show a video in Mekelle, what they're doing to young Tagaru. It's a 25-second clip, actually. So we will wrap up our show here in a sec. But let me just reflect on kind of what the embarrassment, you're talking about the embarrassment. There's no shame in the Amhara elites mindset. You know, like many of those bandas, they were in the diaspora, they went back in, and some of the generals and whatnot who's leading the so-called Ethiopian military actually were captured in the past and spared their lives, and now they're turning around and killing innocent civilians in Tigray. And Eritrea, you know what's funny about Eritrea is every one of their generals and whatever like leadership goes into Tigray saying, oh, we're going to go capture Debretsion because he's in Adwa, he's in Nebelet, he's in Dagarbe, he's in Dagahamus, he's in this, right? They'll send like the so-called top fighters with their generals to lead them, right? And then they're like Tigray Defense Forces, it takes like less than 50 of them to take out like 1,000+ special forces from Eritrea. Eritrean forces are starving to death, which is one of the reasons, actually, which not to justify, but they have looted and stole everything in Tigray, is they have never seen anything like it in Tigray. They have no idea. Like I had Eritreans saying like, why are you complaining about not having electricity or cell phone? That doesn't exist in Eritrea. Like, why are you even complaining? I'm like, because that's how people, you know, people have to survive. They cook, you know, without electricity, you can't make food. Without electricity, you can't charge your cell phone. You can't make, you know, so many things. They're like, well, we don't have that in Eritrea. Well, we're talking about Tigray, okay? And you look at Addis, Addis was put in the top of the map in the Horn of Africa and throughout Africa because of the Tigray leadership that brought in the freedom and democracy to Ethiopia. But Ethiopians don't appreciate that. Instead, they built a false narrative for the past 20 plus years, somehow saying Tigray was stealing all the infrastructure, all the wealth, which was pure lie. So that's why I'm like proud to publicly say it. We are not going to get fooled anymore. We are not going to, like in our culture, they keep telling us like, which means, be patient. The truth will prevail. The truth will come out, and that the truth somehow will judge them. No, I'm sick and tired of that. I'm done. So with that, when my people, your people, our people, me, you, like Tagaro, okay? I say the wrong way. Your people, no, our people are, are mistreated, disrespected. I will not be silent. I will not be silent. And you know what? If that has a risk, that's okay. I am saying it publicly. I am willing to take that risk on behalf of my Tagaro people. I will never be afraid to speak up. I will never shy away from a killer, from someone who is attacking civilian in Tigray, my Tagaro people. So here's an example. It's a quick 24-second, 25-second video. This is what's happening in Tigray right now. These are like soldiers and the innocent civilians. They're making them walk on their knees on a concrete. This is a punishment. And then look, they're beating them up behind. I don't know if you can see. So the point here is when I see something like this, and when people say like, oh, you have to be patient. No, I don't. You have to be nice. No, I don't. I'm not going to like provoke like, hate. I'm not going to say, let's go kill them. I'm not going to say, let's go hurt civilians. But the soldiers, you know what makes me actually even angry? We have some like, Tagaro, like we're building to like, Tagaro media. But here on Cyber Power Tigray, I will never apologize. I will never say, oh, this when the Ethiopian Eritrean soldiers get captured and they say, look at them, they're young, they're just innocent. No, they're not. No, they are not. Nothing pisses me off actually more, and I'm not, I might be yelling, shouting, but like let me just say this. The Eritreans and the Amhara militia, the Amhara Fana, and the so-called federal troops come into Tigray and taking this kind of atrocity and action on civilians. There's more gruesome videos that I'm not going to show it, right? But when I see that, and then Tagaro media saying to those troops who are captured, they're young, they're poor looking, they're innocent looking. Are you kidding me? I don't know what Tagaro are smoking. I'm sorry, but I have no remorse. I have no patience for that kind of. I'm not saying let's just kill them all too. I think that's the military's responsibility. When they're fighting, they should take them out. But at the same time, those who are captured, to say they're innocent, to say they're young, innocent looking young people, no, they came. You know who is innocent young people? Is the young girls who are defenseless, who are being like, attacked. The civilians, the 60, 70, 80-year-old women and men in the village who could not run away from this kind of atrocity are actually being like beheaded. We thought ISIS, the terrorist organization, jihadists, were bad people. Actually, we have soldiers from Eritrea and Amhara and Ethiopia doing worse than what Al-Qaeda, ISIS was doing. Because ISIS, at least they were doing it to a few people. I'm not minimizing that, but they were doing it to a few people to terrify the world, to show a video. What's happening in Tigray right now is they are going house to house, door to door, 15 to 20 troops, like raping 2, 3 young girls, and then in the end, killing them to hide the evidence. So that's why I'm like, as much as I try to hold, my anger, as much as I try to be positive, I also have to be, speaking the truth. So for Tagaru, I want you to know your pain. You don't have to express it, explain to me. I feel you. I feel it in me. We all feel each other. We know how it feels. The difference, though, is we must keep fighting. We must keep united. We must keep uplifting one another. We cannot let our emotions control our mind and give up the fight.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond.
No, I completely agree. I think for so long, like I was saying before, we've been told to turn the other cheek, or to be the ones to, to be the bigger person. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think even what we're doing now is still being the bigger person. Us not wanting an eye for an eye, it's in itself us being the bigger person, and we have nothing to, I think we're way past trying to explain anything, trying to explain our pain, trying to reason with anyone who 3 months later, if you have not seen, or you don't want to see what's going on in Tigray, if you don't want to see this, then clearly there is something wrong with you as a person, your moral grounds as a person, or you don't have any moral grounds as a person. Therefore, what has been done to us now, we think it started 3 months ago. But I think what a lot of us don't understand is this has been built up. We've been demonized since the Derg regime was ousted from Ethiopia. Since Derg left Ethiopia, their one job was to make sure that Ethiopia is destabilized. Then their job was to make sure they demonized Tagaru as thieves, as bandas, or calling us every name under the earth. But we turned the other cheek. We were working for the greater good of Ethiopia, which I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I think that's very commendable. And we're still doing that today. We are still working towards holding back, not being disrespectful, which comes within our character. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with conducting yourself in a certain manner. We Mike, exactly like you said, though, that doesn't take away from the pain that we are feeling today. But we have to remember, this has been done so strategically for so long. This has been premeditated, like news channels like ESAT, who have been demonizing us, making sure that the people of Tigray are painted with one paintbrush, with they align everything bad that happens in Ethiopia to the people of Tigray or Tagaru. And we've remained quiet through that. And sometimes when I think about it, that might be the reason of why we're in the situation that we're in today. The fact that we never defied all the stigma that was placed upon us, a lot of the young people, we were rather, we didn't want to be too out there in, not an identity, but in trying to defend what was being done in Ethiopia. But now we understand that all of this propaganda was to subject the people of Tigray. And because this has been done for so long, some of it has been cemented in certain social groups, like certain social groups within Ethiopia. People in Eritrea have always been told, Wayana is your enemy, Wayana is your enemy, the enemies in Tigray, because the president of Isaias doesn't want his own people to have internal questions, to ask him why the economy was not growing, why there's no developments in Eritrea. He'll give them, I don't know, it's like giving a candy to an adult and saying, okay, that you should be satisfied. He hasn't done anything within his country, but has always externalized his problem, has always pointed his fingers at not just the TPLF regime, not the TPLF party, sorry, but to Tigray in general, which is why we're seeing the atrocities we're seeing today from the troops, is because of how demonized they have made Tagaru in the eyes of the Eritreans in Eritrea, and also the Amhara militia. They believe that Tigray is a threat to them. And the only way to beat this threat is not by this is, like I said before, this is not against TPLF, this is against the people of Tigray. And unless you subjugate them, unless you make sure that economically, politically, they are weak, there is no way that they know how to subject, except to weaken them in every aspect. And I think during all of this, what they didn't predict is how sometimes shock and horror drives people into acting and conviction a lot more than being comfortable. Sometimes when you're in shock, you get the best results because you act upon survival, and we are acting upon survival for the need of survival. We're not acting because we want a small check. We're acting for the survival of our people. Therefore, I think this is one thing they didn't predict. And this is one thing as Tagaru we should be very proud of, the fact that we have mobilized, we've achieved so much, but we have yet so much to achieve, yet so much to work on. And I believe we can do that. But I believe that we should all be very switched on to how we can involve ourselves personally in this struggle. Because I don't want anyone to be confused. The struggle in Tigray on the ground is just as big as the struggle in the diaspora. On the virtually, on the internet, lobbying is just as big. It's just as important, So just saying that, to mobilize and to make sure you reach out to your community leaders to see how you can be of help, to see how you can put your skill set into working effectively for these communities, so that we can actually bring light to what's happening to our people. Not just bring light, but bring a stop to it.
I completely agree. Thank you. I think you do like an amazing job of remaining calm and expressing. Obviously, even though we all have the same pain, the same frustration, sometimes for some of us, it's harder than others. Obviously, that's why so I start doing once in a while now. I'll go out. So I'm a distance runner.
Wow.
So I go out, do my little workouts and run and whatnot. I typically try to get a 45 minutes or an hour running, and then I try to share it on my Facebook to just encourage my Tagaru brothers and sisters around the globe. Just hey, sometimes it feels good to just take a deep breath and just go out and just do a little jogging. I mean, seriously,
you need to look after yourself, because without looking after yourself, you're no use to anyone. So I think it's very important in times of distress like this that we are very aware of how we are looking after ourselves. I think you're right.
Agree. So here's the Washington, D.C. protest that I shared with you at the beginning of our discussion.
Yeah.
It's a 3-day. So it will be February 25th, 26th, and 27th. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday this coming week. I hope that many of you, I will see you there. I will be there for sure. I've got my plane ticket. I fly in on the 24th. I will be there until Sunday, the 28th. So I am looking forward to seeing so many of my inspiring, young, old, whatever age. I mean, the youngest kid that in New York City that I talked to, on my last protest, was 6-year-old protesting, saying, "Stop the genocide in Tigray."
Amazing.
In a cold snow day, a 6-year-old girl. And it's funny, because I was just I was so shivering cold, and I'm trying to put my glove on, and she just comes from the side. She taps me in the shoulder, and I look, and I was like, wait. She's like, "Hi," and I was like, "Oh, hi." And then she start chanting "Stop the mass." I was just like, "How old are you?" She's like, "I'm 6." So
it's great to see this.
That's right. So Tagaru, it's we are, the Amhara right now are shocked, and so is the Eritreans. They're wondering, how is Tagaru so united? How did they didn't even know we had this money in number wise coming out. They're just where do all these Tagaru come from? So they see our flags now everywhere. And we're so proud. But so I want to give you an opportunity to wrap this up and be able to whatever message you want to send on. But I hope that you're going to be able to come back on again. So to finish our segment, I'm going to let you do the closing statement in English, and then I'm going to do in Tigray now.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Mike, for even inviting me on. Thank you for what you're doing as well. This is amazing. It's great for you to give a platform to us all, to connect us as well. So what you're doing is great work. To the diaspora everywhere, worldwide, in Europe, I would like to say that you have all been doing an amazing job. What you have been doing, everyone everywhere has been, like you said, Mike, our mobilization. It's amazing, honestly. Like you said, I think being from Tigray, most of us had not connected with what we should have been doing for Tigray. What we weren't doing enough, I believe, in my eyes. And I think now is the time for us to actually wake up and to take responsibility for Tigray and all the Tagaru who are facing all this, who are facing a genocidal war. We need to take responsibility for them, because they're not able to express themselves, or they're not able to express what's happening to them. So we need to take this on as our duty. This is not something we do for fun. This is not something that we enjoy doing, because this comes from a deep place of pain, of trauma, of everything that we've been going through for the last 100 and so days. We have been all affected. We are all traumatized. We are all dealing with this in our own way. And it's okay for us to have pain, but let's please direct our pain to action. Let's make sure that we are using whatever resources you have, whatever job you do, whatever educational background you have. Now is the time to apply this, to be unified, to apply this to helping Tigray. And you can do this in so many different ways. We are all on Twitter. I know, Mike, you're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. You can follow, we have so many calls for action, all the information that we have, we communicate it through Twitter. So now is the time that I feel like the diaspora has to wake up. We have to be able to be united. There is no room for us to not be united. We don't have any choice. This is a matter of survival. And I would also like to thank all our Eritrean and our Eritrean brothers and sisters who have gone out to protest, and those who are seeing what they have protested against this war against Tigray, that have joined Tagaru by our side and are condemning Isaias Afwerki, condemning the Ethiopian government, or friends of Tigray who are with our interests and who are as involved as advocating for our people. We all need to. This is not an obligation of this is nothing to do with politics. This is an obligation of you as a human being. This is a call to your morality, to make sure that you stand for what is right. So yeah, that's all I would like to say. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much, Millet. So I am, like I promised, I'm gonna take a couple minutes, well, hopefully a couple minutes or shorter, but I'm gonna have to say something in Tigrinya. I typically do in Tigrinya in English, but since he covered it all for us, we appreciate you. So what I want to say to the young Tagaru, by the way, before I switch into Tigrinya, is that I want to see you guys out in New York and DC next week, massive. Bring your gear. You might, let's make sure you have your flag, Tigray. So, Hawate, Tigray, Worki, Tigray, Shishai, Tigray, Nijagano, Waleti, Tigray, Nuhulusab, Mafkari. Adina, Hana Tagaru, Nisab, Hama Aynamanelun, Hama Aynawadin. Like, Lamagizie was in another login, Hama Sarahti, Nisab, Khibride Folto, Rasahat, Bediablos. قالوا خوينا مشنقلاتهم زي سرح تقراي زي مريتهم مريتنا يلم كورو نايم حارة فانا ارتراويان وعلم كم تميلات حفتنا زولتو ارتراويان وزا زلو سلام سر زغور زلو ገንዘብ ዝሕግዙ ዘለው ዝዋፃ ዝገብርዎ ዘለው ነገር ያኔልና ብኽብሪ ናይ ብሓቂ ታሽም የብሉን ፀላእቲ ክነብዝሕ የብልና እቲ ኣብ ኤርትራ ሙሉእ ዘሎ ኣብ ኣምሓራ ዘሎ ሃገረሰብ ዝነብር ህዝቢ ውግእ እንታይ ኣሎ ዝፈልጦ ነገር የለን ንባዕሉ ዝበልዖ ሰትዮ ይጨንቆ ዘሎ ሱዳን ንባዕላ ሱዳን ናብ ኣምሓራ ኣትያ ክንደይ ኣምሓራ ይሳቀለ እዩ ትማሊ ኣብ ሻሸመነ ዝበሃል ከተማ ኣብ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ቀረባ እዩ ዓብይ ትክታት እናተረኣየ ነይሩ በላሶታት እናተቃፀለ ነይሩ ዝግበር ዘሎ ኢትዮጵያ ግፍዒ ብዘይረብሕ መሽረፈት ኣሕመድ ዝግበር ዘሎ ግፍዒ ንህዝቢ ኢትዮጵያ ዝበኣሰ ግን ህዝቢ ትግራይ ማለት እዩ ትሕማቅ ናይ መጨረሻ ንምንታይ ተጋሩ ሓቅነት ክብሪ ሕጊ ስለ ንኽብር መንነትና ክትንከፍ ግን ስለ ዘይንደሊ ተጋሩ እንተዘየጥፍኤ ኣነ ነጊሰ ክነብር ከመይለ ኣብ ኢትዮጵያ ድዩ ንጉስ ኮይነ ገዚአ ንክነብር ግን ንተጋሩ ከጥፈለን ዝጀመሮ ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ግን ከም ከልቢ እናተለወሰ ዝዛረቦ ፀብሒ ክስራሕ እንተሎ ቀመም ድሕር ዘእቲካ ልጨው ድሕር ዘይገርካሉ ኣይምቁርን ናይ ኢሳያስ ዘረባ ድማ ፀው ዘይብሉ ፀብሒ ተሰርሐ ኢለ ዝሓስቡ ኣነ እዚ ዘይረብሕ ኣረጊት ፅዋሕ ንጎ ዝመውት ቅድሚ ሞቱ ግን እንታይ ዝመስሉ መናእሰይ ተጋሩ እንታይ ዝመስላ ህፃውንቲ ቆልዑ እናተጋሰስዎን እናቀተልዎም ይርከብ ኣሎ እዩ ኣክሱም ንባዕሉ ናይ ሃይማኖት ታሪክ ዝሓዘ ደብረ ዳሞ ታሪክ ዝሓዘ ቤተክርስትያን ኣሎ ዝበሃል ናይ ቀደም መፅሓፍቲ ንኸቃፅሉ ንኽሰርቁ መስጊዳት ንባዕሉ ታሪከኛ ዝኾነ መስጊድ ከም ዝረአና ቅድሚ ሕዚ ደጋጊምና ኣፍሪሶም ዕንዮሞ እዮም ኤርትራ እንታይ ተማሂሩ 30 ዓመት እንተይልና ህዝቡ ስደት እናተባረረ ይመውት ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ኤርትራውያን ተገፊዐን እየን ኤርትራ ባዕሎም ኣብ ትግራይ መፅኦም ብፅቡቅ ተቐቢልና እዮም ኢና እቶም ኣብ ስደት ዘለዉ መዓት እውን ብትግራይ ገይሮም ርዮም መወፅኦም እዮም ተጋሩ መንነትና ማይፈልጡና እዮም እቶም ተጋሩ ኤርትራውያን ተባሂሎም ብሕሶት ብጉራ ዘየሎ ከም ዘለ እናገበሩ ዝውዕሉ ዝሓድሩ ግን ብኣቶም ኣይኮነን ንሕና ተጋሩ መንነትና ብረስሓት ሓሰውቲ ሰረቕቲ ዘይረብሑ ኤርትራውያን ንህዝቦም ዘየኽብሩ ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ኤርትራውያን ክድፈራ ከለዋ ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ኤርትራውያን ክሞታ እንተለዋ ፈቆዶ ዓረብ ሃገር ፈቆዶ ባሕርታት እዚ እኮ ትክክለኛ ኣይኮነ ኢሎም ዘይዛረቡ ተጋሩ ብሓደ ሕብረታዊ ከምዚ ተኣኪብና ሰላማዊ ሰልፊ ጌርና ንዓለም ክነንቀጥቅጥ እንተለና ኸ ካብ እዮም መፅኦም ዞም ተጋሩ ኢሎም ይድነቁልና ኣለዉ ስረና ንሕና ግን ድሕሪ ሒዚ ንሕና ትግራይ ብኤርትራ ቀባጢርና በአምሓራ ቀባጢርና ይኮንና ንነብር ብክብሪ ምሳና ዝነብር ኣኽቢርና ጎኒ ጎኒ ምስ ጎረቤት ክንነብር ኢና ብበትሪ ዝበለ ግን ንሕና በትሪ ወፍተ የበለጋና ሓደ እግርና ክትንክፈና እንተሎ ክልቲኡ እግሪ ኢና ክንዓፅሎ ሓደ ዓይንና ክትንክፈና እንተሎ ክልተ ዓይንና ክነንቁሮ እዚኡ ኣብ ኣእምሮና ክንሕዞ ኣለና ከይድና ግን ንሕና ንተሃራሰብ ኣይንቀትልና ንተሃራሰብ ኣይንጎድን ኢና ሕማቅ ኣይንሰርሕን ኢና እዚኡ ንሕና ኣብ ባህልና የለን ከምኡ ኢልና ድማ ናብኡ ዘኽኢለና መገዲ እውን የብልናን ኢና እቲ መፅኡ ግፍዒ ዝሰርሐልና ግን ከምቲ ደብረፅዮን ዝበሎ እውን ትግራይ ረመፅ እያ ሓዊ እያ 500,000 ወታደር መፅኡ ኣበይ ኣሎና ኣብ ትግራይ እኮ ብዙሕ ወታደር እኮ ይነበረና ወታደር ግን ህዝቢ ትግራይ ባዕሉ ጠምዩ ፀሚኡ ቆሪሩ ትግራይ ንተጋሩ እዩ ሞት ይሐሸና ኢሎም እዮም ምርኩስ ሒዞም ቤተክርስትያን ጸሎት ገብሮም ማርያም ጽዮን ኣክሱም 800 ሰባት ተቆተሉ ናይ ታቦታት ከይድፈር ናይ ሃይማኖት ታሪክ ዝሓዘ ቤተክርስትያን ወታደር ኣየኣትዎን ተባሂሉ ክዝረብ እንተሎ ናይ ሻዕብያ ወታደር እንታይ ገይሩ ቀቲልዎም ስለዚዩ ኤርትራውያን ፕሮፓጋንዳኩም ይትረፍ ሓቅነት ዘለኩም ይቀኒየልና ኢለ እየ ሒዝም ክደግሞ እየ ሓቅነት ዘይብልኩም ሓሰውቲ ኤርትራውያን ግን ብናሃትኩም ሕሰት ንስኻትኩም ናይ ከም ትረአዩኒ ሰይጣን ናብ ተመን ኣትዩ ዲያብሎስ ማለት እዩ ዘታለለይ ንኣዳምና ሂዋን ከምኡ ኢኹም ንስኻትኩም ካብኡ እንድሓር ይሪአኩም እየ ብኣኻትኩም ድማ ተሰቂቐ ገለለ ይነብር እኒአ ዓለም ኣነ መንነተይ ትግራዋይ ብኣኻትኩም ኣይኮነን ዝኮርዕ ኣነ بتوم جاغان حواتي بتوم ياتاتي تجارو جن بخماي زبالة تجراوي جن بتجراونتي يذكر عني ولا ورقتي أمريكا وانتخوني أنا مننتي ما نم جزء تجراوي تفتيري هاي تجراو دامي تجراويو سوري تجراوي كوينة جن نسف حماق نجاري منني عبد تجراي موسين هزبي تنكف حماق سر هزبي جن بتحتنا غير أي زاربن بتحتنا غير أي كبل سلازيو أو إثيوبيا زلهم تجارب دقاقي ما قد محيزم لكم يحيزم لكم تايب نحنا أخواتكم تجارب عبيتي بناسي نقولوا أفسدت هاجر زلنا ولا زي قلتنا ورقتنا أمريكا خونا كندا خونا يوكي خونا يوروب مولو زلو كالي هاجرات ولا أنت خونا مننتنا إحنا أبتين كلاتنا تجارب خونا سلاب أفنا زولنا يكونن دمنا تجروا أيو تن بالتحول تجروا إننا تجروا يتنا تبع هذا دمنا قصص نهاتكم دم فسست لها أبايتا أصمتكم كيرجع نحنا أفسدت كوينا جون ولا كلاش انت زي حزنا نواقعنا زلنا بمن تلكمنا بسلامة وسلفي بحقاونا عالم كما يجرنا زم مجبرتي زم ليابو كما يجرم صبحنكو بحقاو خمس تحازو هو 110 معت دم معتي كوينات كازول عن هزنا في تجراي جن كي ايدك اسنا اي عرفنا سلوزي نمنينا نهزنا نهاجرنا نتجراي او جونهم كوينا اسكاب زو كوينات زيو تطو زبل اسكاب هز تجراينا سلام كوينو مريتو بسنة سرعات بحقي سكاب زملسلو تግራይ ሃገርና ናጽነታ ኮይና ዓለም ባንዴራና ኣብ ዩናይትድ ኔሽን ማለት ሕብረታዊ መንግስቲ ኣብ ኒውዮርክ ከተማ ባንዴራ ናይ ትግራይ እዚ ባንዴራ እዚው ከፍ ኢሎም ሰማይ ከም ሃገሩ ባንዴራ ክስካብ ስቀል ተጋሩ ንሕና ድሕሪ ሒዚ ንድቅሰል መገዲ የለን ሞት ይሐሸና ኢልና እዚው ከተሰምዕዎ ካብ መናእሰይ ዳያስፖራ ኣብ ሃገር ዓለም ዘለና ተጋሩ ንትግራይ ህይወትናም ክንህብ ኢና እዚ ጉራ ኣይኮነን እዚ በቃ ዝፈረምናዮ ኣልኪዳን እዩ ተጋደልቲ ሜዳ ክወፁ ተለው ናይ ብፆቶም ደም ኣኽቢሮም ሞት ይሐሸና ኢሎም እዮም ዝቃለሱ ሒዝም ተኾነ ዝቃለሱ ዘለው ንዚ ኢሎም እዮም ሃገርና ትግራይ ሰብ ክኽብር ተሎ ሰብ ዘየኽብሮ መፅኡ ዝጋሰሳ ዘሎ ናይ ሻዕብያ ወራር ናይ ኢትዮጵያ ወራር ካብ ትግራይ ይውፀልና ኢና ካሊእ ንሓቶ ነገር የለን መብትና ይከበረልና እዩ ካሊእ ንብሎ ነገር የለን እዚ ድማ ኣብ ማንም ሃገር ዘሎ ሰብ ብስነ ስርዓት ብክብሪ ዝነብር ሰብ ሕጊ ይኸበር እዩ መን እዩ ሕጊ መኽበሪ መን እዩ ሕጊ መፍረሲ ግን ንሪኦ ኣለና መሽረፈት ኣሕመድ ሕጊ ሰባሪ ኮይኑ ዘይተመረፀ መንግስቲ ኤክስፓየር ኮይኑ እዩ ፀባን ባዕሉ ኤክስፓየር ኮይኑ ዝሰተን ኢኻ ኣብይ ኣሕመድ ድማ ኤክስፓየር ኮይኑ እዩ ተደሊኹ ኢዱ ምስቶም ምዕራብ ይቀመጥ ናብ ዱባይ ዘይኸይድ ዓዲ ዓረብ ይውፀልና ምስቶም ምዕራብ ይቀመጠልና ንሕና ሃገርና ግን ብሰላም ንደልዮ ሰላም ዝመፀልና ሰላም ንቕበል ኢና ናይ ሃይማኖት ፀገም የብልናን ኣስላማት ኣሕዋት እነይውና ክርስቲያን ኣሕዋት እነይውና ሃይማኖት ዘይብሎም ኣሕዋት እነይውና ብስሩ ኣይንጣየቀልና ስለዚዩ ዘረባን ውሕቢለያ እየ ሓፍትና ሚድያት ካብ ዩኬይ ሒዚ ዳርጋ ሰዓት 10 ፈረቓን ቀሪበሎ እዩ ይመስለኒ 11 ኮይኑ ይኸውን እኳ 11:15 right almost
It's 11, yeah.
11:17 so I'm doing the math because 3:17 my time here so I thank you so much I appreciate you when I end the segment I'm going to catch up with you in a sec at the end of the segment here but unless you have something to say do you want to say or thank you or something in Tigrinya to حواتنا
نقنيلي تقو تقارو ملا عالم زلكم
see I knew you had it I knew it
if I try hard
it's not no it's wonderful you know so just so you know they appreciate to hear like even a single word ayohum ayona you know they love it so like so I'm going to ask you one other thing that
okay
so yesterday was the last day of Yekatit Asar Tahade which is meaning the beginning 46 years ago this week was the movement as we know of the Tigray fighters who brought the democracy that Ethiopia had enjoyed for 27 years but say that it's been in the dark and I congratulated them now that it's bright they have a bright future because the economy is destroying Ethiopia but my question for you is when Tigray is free which it will be when it's Yekatit Asar Tahade 47th anniversary would you mobilize people throughout Europe and the UK and for us here in the US Canada mobilize Tagarus and we all go to Mekelle and celebrate the 47th anniversary of Yekatit Asar Tahade
I think after what we go through كل شعتي لكاتي خن الله إلى حسب كل شعت every day لكاتي تكوننا.
I did a spin.
Because after this, every day we have to remember خندي سب حليفو أبزي بس إحنا اللي نمو حجي زجبرنا قالسي أب قالسي أب virtual نجبرو أب قالسي أب مريتنا نجبرو كله لكاتيت كل شعت لكاتيت كون الله إلي يحسب.
سلازيو مقالن عامتاجن كينا مقالة كلنا نفس وقف عالم زلة تجرواي بحدا خوينا خنا خبراينا. زاو عنا تولنا هنا نحنا بقى أب diaspora عالم ملء زلنا تجارو ملء أب تجراي زلهم مساهم مسينا يكاتيت عصرت حدا 47 عامة مهرت كم زي عامة مالتيو مساهم أو قلناهم كينا يو زياء 45 زبالتي أنا عامي 46 تمال تجار شالا 46 يوم أيتران بدن بنبر أبقى صار عمت 47 عامة مرت تجراي آتينا أب مقالة ملء ختمات تجراي أدالي خايتولني we will celebrate it throughout Tigray a year from now.
Amen. Amen.
And we will end the broadcast. Thank you so much for listening to us. I appreciate you guys. I probably see you guys tonight. I'm gonna have Tagadala Imna Arra hopefully tonight, 9 p.m. our time. It will be morning time for Millet, obviously, but there we go.